In this tutorial, we're going to check out the basics of the texture painting mode in Blender. I'll go through the creative process I follow to come up with a texturing idea. Then I'll introduce you to the interface and the tools of the texture painting mode. And finally, I'll show you on practice how to texture paint a subject like this little whale. To follow this tutorial, you can download this whale project from my Gumroad page, donations are welcome, or any other model with UVs done. If you don't have UVs, press pause and check out this video, link in description, about UV mapping and unwrapping by CG Boost. The original project idea was to make a simple texturing using a classic humpback whale skin colors as reference. While my little daughter was enjoying herself painting it with random colors, I thought, why doing the classic colors we can see on real whales in real life? That's so boring. Let's make a crazy colored whale for this video. Life is too short to work on boring stuff. I can't believe I just defined whales colors boring, but you got what I mean, I hope. So after this illuminating thought, I have made a board on Pinterest where I collected all the pins with different animal patterns and colors, and then I choose to use this poison dart frog and this clown triggerfish colors and patterns mixed together for the whale. After making my choice, I then collected some images of these two guys into a PureRef board so I could keep them close and watch them all the time on my second screen. One more thing I would recommend before starting is setting up the viewport in a way that you have everything you need. There are presets for this, like this one. This is how it looks, but I personally prefer setting it up my way. So this is how my setup looks. You can of course use the layout or set up something yourself, but just in case you decide to use the same layout I have here, let's quickly go through it so I can show what we have here. Here we have, of course, the 3D viewport, then here we have the image editor, down here under the image editor we have the properties panel, and down here hidden we have the shader editor. It will stay shrinked most of the time, but sometimes I will bring it up, set up something in the shader, and then hide it again, so it's not in the way. So before showing you how the process itself works, let's quickly check the interface elements. We have first of all the tools panel over here. If you don't see it, it might be because it's hidden. And to make it appear, you can press the T shortcut on the keyboard or this arrow here. Let's check the tools we have here. First of all, we have the brush tool. You select it and paint. Then we have the blur tool, which allows you to blur what you have painted. The smear tool allows you to smear your painted area. And then you have the clone tool, which allows you with Control click to choose any spot, and then you copy it to another spot. Then you have the fill tool. You click and fill the whole subject with a color. And then you have the mask tool, pretty important. With the mask tool, you can mask some areas. And then if you select another tool, and let's maybe choose another color, you can see I can paint here, and when I disable the mask, I can see that the masked area haven't been painted. Down here we have the brush panels. As you can see, we don't only have brushes here, we also have the different tools, like the fill tool, for example. And every time I select a different tool from the brush in this panel, it also gets selected here. For example, I just selected the clone tool here, and it got selected here as well. Here you can also regulate the size of the icons, Let's bring it back to normal. And you can tell Blender to show or hide the brush's names. This panel can also be hidden. So if you can't see it, you have to find this little arrow down here, and just click on it and you're good to go. Then we have the top bar where brushes tool settings are displayed. Let's quickly check the most important ones. First of all, here we have primary color and secondary color. The first one you use to paint normally. So here I have blue and I paint with blue. The second one is the secondary color. It's basically like the background color. This is how we can consider it. And you can use it to paint by clicking and holding Control while painting. You can also swap them by pressing X on your keyboard. Then we have brush size and strength, which we can use to make our brush bigger or even smaller. We can regulate it and make it weaker or stronger. And we can also use for these two values the shortcuts F for the brush dimension or the shortcut Shift F to make it weaker or stronger. Now let's bring these two to something more usable. Also, this got pretty messy, so let's use the fill tool to make it uniform again. By the way, I forgot to mention that for both size and strength, you have the possibility to enable pressure sensitivity by clicking on these two options. If you enable them, what happens? For example, let's try with the sides. Let's pick another color. And you can see I just enabled this. And now when I draw, if I press a lot, the brush gets bigger. And if I press a little, the brush becomes very small. And of course, same thing with the strength. Like if I press a little, it's almost invisible. And if I press a lot, it's very strong. Let's reset this with Alt R. And of course, you can also combine these two options. So here are the two options combined. And for this, to make use of these options, you of course need a graphics tablet. Otherwise, you don't have any hardware to detect actually the pressure sensitivity. And yeah, as you have seen, if you combined a mass on your object and you still haven't saved the texture, you can quickly reset it by hovering your mouse over the image editor and then pressing Alt R. And this will reset the texture to the latest version you have saved. Here you have some more advanced options that give you more control over your brush shape and behavior. For example, here we have the possibility to assign a colored mask to our brush. If we assign it, let's check what happens. You can see we have a colored mask, but very important is to remember when you assign something like that, if you want to use your mask colors, you should set up the saturation of your brush to 0, so it should be white. So as you can see now, it is using my brush colors, which are orange and green. So let's reset, and here we have the possibility to set up a texture mask, which is the difference between simple texture and texture mask. That this one uses black and white masks to define the shape, the outline of your mask brush. So here you have this irregular shape, and as you can see, when I start painting, this is how my brush looks now. If I disable it and remove it, my brush becomes rounded again. So this basically is the difference between these two. This you use for the color, and this you use for the shape, the outline. Let's reset again. Next we have the stroke menu. and by default it's set up to space, and here you have the possibility to adjust the stroke behavior, and here you can adjust some useful things like spacing, which allows you to add some space between the dots of your stroke. Then we have the possibility to adjust the dash radius and length, which has similar effect to what spacing has, but basing more on how fast and how many brush strokes you do. I don't really use this one. Then we have jitter. Jitter is very useful. So if we increase that, you can see that instead one single brush strokes, we have this random effect that spreads across the whole mesh. And let's go back. Then we have the possibility to increase the samples. This is more for the brush strokes resolution, but one sample is more than enough. And then we have the stabilize stroke function. By the way, let's reset the jitter. A small tip, if you're playing around with the settings and you have messed them up a bit, you can right click and click reset to default value. Here we have the stabilize stroke function, which basically works like so. So instead of immediately painting, you have this line that's dragging your brush stroke, and the result is basically a smoother brush stroke. Let's go back. And of course here you have the possibility to set up the radius and the factor to make the line longer and so on, so it's more precise. Then we have the possibility to choose different stroke methods. The ones I personally use a lot are anchored, which is pretty handy when you have some textures, which basically draws your strokes anchored to a spot. And then you have line, which allows you, let's go back with Control Z, which allows you to draw a straight line. And then we have curve, which allow you to draw a curve. You need to create one first. Then by pressing Ctrl and right clicking, you first draw the curve, and then by pressing Enter, you simply draw it. For now, we will reset the stroke to space, and let's move on. And here we have the possibility to personalize the falloff of the brush. And to show you what it means, let's set it up to custom for a second. And you can imagine that here we have the center of the brush, and here we have the outer part. And these dots here basically stand for the opacity level. Highest are the dots, more opacity you have. Lower are the dots, less opacity you have. Let's make an example. This point here has full opacity, while this slowly goes down to 0, and here we have completely no opacity. How it works on practice, let's see. So if I take my brush and paint, you can see that basically here I have full opacity, and then towards the outside it fades away down to 0. And for example, if we go here and use this preset here, which adds 2 points both on the maximum opacity area, here and here, this means that from start to bottom, the brush has completely full opacity. And how it looks on practice, let's see. So here we have faded opacity, and here we have complete full opacity on the whole brush. So that's basically how it works. Let's reset the brush and the texture here. Here we have the cursor menu where we can regulate the visibility of the falloff, texture and max texture. So for example, if I enable falloff, you can see that then I have the possibility to see a preview of my falloff. So for example, if I change it and set it to smoother, you can see it previews how it should look. So that's basically the same for texture and mask texture. Then we have some options that are hidden right now. To make them appear, you can scroll the middle button of your mouse, or if you're using a pen tablet, you can just click whatever you have set up as middle button and drag like this. These three buttons here allow you to enable or disable the mirroring for your object. So for example, here I have it enabled for the x-axis. So if I paint on my whale, you can see it's not going to paint on just on one side, it's going to paint also on the other side. And that's very handy. Then here we have a drop-down menu where we can choose on which texture we are painting. We also have the possibility to switch from material to single image mode and create new texture images, and of course save them. Here we can enable and disable the stencil mask and the cavity mask. And here we can enable and disable another masking option, which is connected to edit mode. So we can select faces in edit mode, enable this option, and then in paint mode the deselected areas will be masked. One last thing I would like to mention are some options we have inside the properties panel over here. Most of them are actually the same we have over here, but what is missing, let's bring this up, are some more advanced tools for color managing and selection. So for example, here we can invert the primary and the secondary colors. We of course have the same color wheel we have over here, but we also have the possibility to detach the color from all the other brushes. What this means. So right now, by default, the option we have here is the color that is the same across all the brushes that use colors, of course. So for example, if I have the fill tool and I have the paint soft, you can see when I select them, they have the same identical color. What I can do is click on this button and select some different color for the paint soft brush and another color for the fill tool, and you can see they now have different colors. I can always re-enable this option and it goes back to the yellow I have selected previously. So basically each brush have the possibility to use the shared color across all the brushes and also the personalized color you choose for that brush. One more option is the color randomization option. We actually have it in the top panel over here, but I personally prefer using it from here for some reason, I don't know. So if you enable it, for example, let's set the hue randomization to maximum. I have the yellow color here, but when I start with the fill tool, you can see that every time I click on fill, the color I'm using is different. It's because of the hue randomization. Anyway, it's more evident if you use a brush. You can take a brush, start painting, and as you can see, while painting, you have like different colors and not just one. So that's basically how it works, and it's the same for hue, saturation, and value. So for example, if I set it up for value, you can see that it starts changing, bringing my yellow color from super dark to super bright and so on. Almost forgot to mention that with these options here, you have the possibility to set up the randomization in a way that it enables with single brush strokes. So here, every time I paint a brush stroke, the color changes, or with brush pressure. So if I don't press, the brush stays pink. Let's maybe use another color, maybe yellow. So if I don't press, it stays yellow, but as long as I start pressing, it starts being randomized. One more thing we don't have here is the gradient. So let's fill this with a uniform color so we can check how it works. And let's go back to Paint Soft and set it up to gradient. So how this works, so now I have black and white gradient set for the brush, and you can see that if I don't press too much on my brush, it paints with a darker color. But if I start pressing a lot, it starts being white. So this is basically how it works for brushes. It interacts with their pressure. To be honest, I don't use this option that much with brushes. I actually use it more with the fill tool. And for this, it works like so. So basically I set up color here, and here I set up the blue color, and you can see that instead of filling it with just one boring color, I have the possibility to fill it with a gradient. We actually will use this once we get to the practice side. Anyway, let's move on to the palette tool. So by default, you don't have anything selected here. This is how you see it. And you can create a new palette, or you can use some palettes you have saved for yourself and so on. By default, you have this palette here, which is the Blender default palette. As you can see, I have saved here some color palettes I have used for the whale body, classic colors, and the eye. You can see here how it works. You can create a new palette here by clicking on new, and then you click on plus to save any color you just have selected. So I think we're done with the UI explanation for now, and we can move on to the practice side. For the practice exercise, I will use this whale model. You can use it too. For this, just follow the link in the description. You will find all the mentioned resources so far. If you would like to support this channel, you can donate something while downloading. Even super small donations are really helpful and motivating. So thanks in advance to everyone who decide to do so. You can totally use your own model if you like. Just make sure you have UVs ready before starting the painting process. Otherwise, you won't be able to paint on a texture. And this is the point of this class. So if you don't have them, press pause, check out this video by CG Boost or any other video about UV making, and then get back here. This whale already has UVs done, so if you're using it, you're good to go. So far, I have used the demonstration setup where I have all the things already prepared, like we have the material set up already here. But this was just to show you how some stuff works. But now, what I want to do is to show you how to start from scratch when you just have your model with UVs and no material or anything yet. So let's get rid of all this stuff. So let's delete this. Then the texture slot is empty. Let's close the image here. Okay, now we don't have anything here. So now that everything is clean and we're ready to go, there are two modes we can use for texture painting, and we can find them here. The first one is the material mode. It's the mode we have used so far. And the second one is the single image mode. So let's check out the difference between these two. In single image mode, you can just click and create a new image, then make sure you're in solid viewport shading, and you're good to go. You can start painting. It's quicker, but you will see the result only in solid viewport shading. If you go to any other viewport shading mode, you won't see anything. This is because you need to set up a material to being able to see it anywhere else. I personally enjoy texture painting more when I can see it nicely illuminated inside the material preview mode. So since I have to set up a material for this anyway, I just go with the material mode, which also has a few things that allow to speed up the material creation process. Let's see how it works. Let's go back to the material preview mode, and here, once we set up the material mode, let's click on plus. Here, Blender gives you the possibility to choose which kind of texture you want to create. In our case, we're going to paint the color, so we're choosing the base color. This is pretty important because if you choose the wrong image type, it's going to be connected to the wrong socket of the new material. So make sure you choose the base color. And now we have to choose the resolution. Regarding the dimensions, remember, higher the resolution is, the less pixelated it will look, but it will also require more performance and might freeze sometimes, especially if you use a big brush. So you need to find a balance that works for you and your hardware. I usually go with 6K, but this time let's go 4K, so I'm sure I won't have any freezes while recording. I also have bad memory, so instead of writing 4K by like resolution by memory, I just go with multiplications. So let's go this, multiplicate by 4, and then once you have one, you can simply go with Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and you're good to go. Everything else can stay as it is, and now you can click on Add. So as you can see, we didn't have anything here, and Blender just have created a new material for us, and it also created a new texture image node and connected it automatically to the base color socket. So now basically we're good to go and we're ready to paint, but there is one more thing I would like to do before starting, and this thing is connecting the normals I have baked from my high-res sculpture here. For this, let's select the principled BSDF node. And before you try to use this trick, make sure you have the node Wrangler add-on enabled. You can enable it from the Properties panel. Inside the Add-ons tab, just type Wrangler and make sure this one is enabled. So once you have enabled this, you can select your principled BSDF node and then simply hit Ctrl-Shift-T. Then we can go find our normals, select them, and as you can see, Blender creates the right setup for us. Now you can see that the normals effect is visible on the whale, and this allows us to, in case we decide to do so, to enhance the normals effect through the texturing process. And this, by the way, is another reason I prefer using the material preview shading instead of over the solid viewport shading while texturing, because in solid viewport shading, as you can see, the normals can be previewed. So let's maybe rename our material and our texture properly, and now we can shrink our shader editor. Of course, let's go back to the material preview mode, and I think now we're ready to paint. Before we start to actually paint, let's analyze the references once again. So the basis I want to use is this poison dart frog. So all the colors and patterns will be taken from this guy here, making exception for the bottom part patterns. So instead of these little dots here, I would like to use these patterns from the clown trigger fish. So now that we have the general idea in our head, we can start to think about how to make it. I personally like to split the texturing into visual layers, and here we can tell that we have dark orange and yellow colors on the top part of the body, and dark blue and bright blue on the bottom part of the frog, and then we have the dark patterns on top of this background. Now, if we think about how to distribute the colors on our whale, we can check out real whales and we can notice that they also have this vertical color splitting, like so. Here they have the dark color and here they have the white color. And we can use the same splitting in our whales and do it like so. And here we can place the orange and yellow colors and here the blue and dark blue colors, and then we can add all the nice patterns on top of them. So now that we know what to do, we can start. So let's start with the background color first, and for this we're going to use the fill tool, set to gradient. So here we have our gradient, and let's pick our first color. Gonna be the red, like something between red and orange, more leaning to red. And then the second color, yellow. Okay, and then here let's add another color, bring it here, then copy this color here. I think this one we can bring a bit more to the side. And here what we're gonna do is open this up and bring the alpha value way down. So why am I doing this? This way I will have a transparent part on my gradient, which basically won't cover the different gradient layers I'm going to do. Let me show you on practice. So we're ready to do our gradient. I want the red color to start somewhere around here. Everywhere else I want the yellow color. Okay, I think this is a good basis for orange and yellow. And now I want to save these two colors before I start doing the blue part. But here we have a little limitation, because if I go to color palette, let's remove this default palette here and create a new one. And we click on plus to add a new color. Even if we have one of these colors selected, what happens is that it adds the green color, which is the color we have on the regular mode here and not in the gradient. So what we can do as workaround, we select one of these colors, go here, and then copy this code, Control C, then we go to color, Control V, and we save it. This one we can remove, and then do the same thing with the darker tone. Go here, paste, Control V, enter, and click on plus to add it to the color palette. And now we're ready to pick our blue tones. Let's start with dark blue, or maybe something like this. And for bright blue, something like this. I want it to be very bright and not too saturated. So I think something like this should be good. And here, let's copy this. And we're gonna save it to the color palette a bit later when we're sure we like the combination. Not bad. So not too much. Okay. If you're not sure if you have enough dark color down here because of the shadow, you can go to the solid mode and set it to a more flat mode by picking this. And I think it's fine. And here you can check the colors without shadows. So down here we still have some white, so let's see if no, too much. Okay, I think no, I think this is too much for me. Let's try to use ease. Okay, I think this way it looks good. And if this line isn't exactly like you want it, you shouldn't care about it because we're gonna adjust that later. I think it's good. And also we don't care about the fins because the fins also we're gonna adjust later with the brushes. I think this is a good basis to start. We can save our colors. Let's check once again how it looks without shadows, and yeah, we're good to go. So let's save the texture image. To save it, we can save it by clicking Alt S, or we can open up this menu and click on Save All Images. Also, as we did for orange and yellow, don't forget to save the colors. So let's copy and paste, and then save, and then again copy and paste and save again. So this way we have all our colors. So as mentioned, this is just the basis, and there are a couple of things I would like to fix before we move on. I would like the yellow color to go like so. So everything else, like this part here, should be blue, and here we have to add some blue down here. And also I would like the yellow color in this area to go like so, like to spread a bit down. But before we do this, we need to set up a personalized brush, because the number 2 thing I don't like, this very clean gradient. I would like this area to have like more irregular shapes. And for this, we're gonna set up a personalized brush. As basis, we're gonna use the Paint Pixel Art brush. So let's duplicate it, save. Why we're using this brush is because it has the constant Falloff and we don't have to set it up. So let's create a new texture inside the texture mask section, and then let's go here and make sure we have the brush mask texture selected. Here we already have image or movie, but if you have it set to anything else, just make sure you select this option here. And here, let's open up an image. Now we should navigate till we find our brush mask TIFF image. Okay, here I have them, and I'm gonna use this one. This brush image is included in the Gumroad downloadable resources, so if you want to use it, go ahead. Otherwise, if you have it, you can use your own brush. Just do whatever you like. I'm gonna select this image here and click on Open Image. And now that we have opened up our brush, we must make sure you have it set to sRGB color space. The alpha should be set to straight. And here, in some cases, you need to enable alpha and calculate, but in my case, it's not necessary. So in this case, you actually would need to disable alpha or enable both options. Just alpha enabled, you can see it messes up everything. So that's what we need. Then let's set up the behavior of our brush. So let's go here, and as you can see, what I don't like, if you paint it, you can see it's irregular, but there are these repetitions on the sides, which are a bit ugly. So what I do in this case is enabling the random option, which basically randomly rotates my brush while painting. And as you can see, this breaks the repetitions a lot. In some cases, you also can use the rake option. I can show you in which cases it's nice. So for example, if you have a brush like this one, you can, instead of random, which generates this effect, which is not bad, but for such lines, best options would be rake, which follows your brush movement, like so. And also, you can even tell Blender to rotate your brush. For example, here, if I want the lines go in different direction, I can set it up like so. Anyway, this is just an example. I want to use this texture here and set it up, disable rake and enable random. So, and of course disable the angle rotation, which I don't need. And then now this is how it looks, and it's perfect for what I need. One last thing we need to do before we get back to painting is going to brush settings, save changes to asset, and then make sure you also add a preview image to it. This way we can distinguish it from the original brush. You can use the same image you have used for the texture here. So once you have set up the image, you can click on Save Changes to Asset again. And now we are good to go. Now let's get back to painting. Before we start painting with our irregular shape brush, I would like to get back to the fill tool. I would like to set up this dark blue color of my gradient to something closer to green. Like now this is too blue for me. I would like to change it. So before we start doing anything else, let's bring this a bit closer to green and make it a bit tiny bit darker. So this tone should be perfect. Let's try it out and see what happens. Yeah, this is the effect I wanted. Make maybe even more dark, like this. So now that I have this greenish blue, I want to add it here. So let's paste it again and add it to the palette. And this one we can remove instead. I think we're good to go and can start painting with our brush. So what I want to do here is selecting this bright blue color and define these margins here. Okay. I want them to be nice and irregular. And before you start, make sure you have enabled the symmetry. Here I have it disabled. In fact, very bad. So go back. It's okay not having symmetry enabled when you're using gradient, because it actually doesn't really uses the symmetry options. Anyway, when painting, very important to enable the symmetry. For me, it's on the x-axis, but for you, if you're using your own subject, it could be any other one. So I have enabled it and we can start painting. So let's make some irregular, nicely irregular shapes here. Okay, this is a nice start. Now I want to enable the straight strength pressure and use the yellow color for this spot here. And just make it, maybe let's enable the strength for the size to make it a bit weaker. Let's get back to the bluish. In this area, as you can see, these two spots are obviously not symmetrical. We can disable symmetry and maybe polish this out following the shapes here as well and here. And then once we are done, we can enable it back. So I think here it's too much want it to be a bit more straight, like still irregular but straight. Okay, very nice. And once we got to a good point, as always, let's save the images. So we have them. We won't lose. I think here is too much. We need this to be a bit smoother. Let's make it smoother. If you're into texturing right now and beyond texture painting you would like to learn about how to make cool materials inside Blender, CGBoost has recently released some new chapters about this topic for its Master Characters Creation course. In these chapters you can learn about advanced materials creation, mixing, painting, and everything you need to know to make your characters and props look incredible. And very important, you're also gonna learn about how to bake all this stuff so you can optimize and use your textures in any other software. Since I'm part of CGBoost team, you can also get a nice 10% discount on all their courses. For more info, follow the links in description. Now let's get back to our whale. Here on the fin, I would like to add some more dark blue, but the problem we have with the fin is if, for example, I paint in a position where I have the brush overlapping the body as well, what happens is that the paint goes on the body too, and this is something I don't want. So what we can do about this, we can use the paint mask tool, which is this option we have over here. So let's enable this, and this option interacts with the selection we have in edit mode. So to use it, we need to go to edit mode, ignore the open mouth. This is some shape keys I have created for this project. We're gonna check them out later so you can use it too. And what I want to do is to select the fins, of course, and to select them we can use the linked selection. For this, select one of the vertices of the fin and then press Ctrl L. And then once you pressed it, it selected everything, as you can see. But if you open up the adjust last operation window here and select seam, the selection will be limited to the first seam it has here. And since we have it on the part which is splitting this the fin from the body, this is exactly what we need. Make sure you select the other fin too, otherwise it won't apply the texturing on the other fin. Simply select one of the vertices of each fin, like so. I have one selected here, and then press Ctrl L again. And you're good to go. Once we have selected the fins, we can go back into texture paint mode, and you can see that our body, it's almost white. This way Blender shows us that we can paint on the fins, but we can't paint on the body. In fact, if I do like so, on our body nothing happens, just the fin gets painted. Here I want the blue color to spread in a softer way, so I don't want to use my irregular brush, but I'm gonna use the paint soft brush. Make it a bit bigger. Okay, the color is what I want, and I just start painting. Sometimes the material preview texture shading might feel confusing because of the shadows. In this case, you can simply switch temporarily to the solid viewport shading. And here, if you can see, sometimes you have these lines because the paint haven't been projected correctly. You can smooth these out with the smear tool. Okay, I think it looks good. Now we can disable the masking tool and go back to the material preview viewport shading. So now I think we have a good basis and we are ready to start adding the black spots, but I don't want to add them directly because I still want to have the possibility to being able to modify the background part. What we're gonna do here is using the mask tool. To start using the mask tool, we need to enable it over here, and then we need to go over here in this little menu, open this up, and as you can see here we have this option here. If it's disabled, enable it, and then open this up here. Here we have stencil image. That means that the masking system inside Blender uses images. So basically it's like having a texture, but instead of influencing your texture color, it's using black and white images to mask out some areas. This is why if we just enable the tool, we start to paint and basically nothing happens. It's because we need to go up here and create a new mask image. So let's click on new. Here you can choose a name for your mask image, and then the resolution, exactly like for the textures we are using. I will use 4K again, but of course, if this is slowing down your computer, you can choose 1K or 2K, anything that allows you to work nicely. Once you have set up everything, this stuff you can leave as it is, and now we can click on new image. Down here we have some kind of different UV maps, so we can select them and use different UVs for just the stencil mask, and here we can choose the display color. So basically here I have black because my black spot's gonna be black, so this way I have some kind of preview, but you of course can choose any color you like. So to set up the tool behavior, I want to duplicate this asset here so I can personalize it and still have the default tool available. Save. Then what I'm gonna do here is disabling the pressure sensitivity and bringing the strength to 1. This because I want my brush strokes to have a clear outline. For the same reason, I'm gonna go to the Falloff and set it to constant. Inside texture mask, let's select the same texture image we have used for our irregular brush, and exactly like we did for our irregular brush, let's set it to random. So now this is how our masking irregular tool looks like. One last thing I would like to set up is the pressure sensitivity for the size. Oh, and before we start painting, make sure you have saved all the changes you have made to your new mask brush. I think we can start with the shapes on the eye. Here the principle is pretty similar to what we have with regular brushes. So with left click you paint, and if you hold Ctrl and left click you erase. I think that for the black spots we can try out a different texture. Of course, don't worry, in the resources you're gonna find all the things I'm using here. So let's try out this one or this one. This one looks more okay. I think this looks better. If you feel like the mask is covering the subject a bit too much, you can lower down the stencil mask opacity over here. The cool thing of using the masking tool this way is that what you do is not permanent right away. So you basically have time to paint it, watch it, and check it out, and maybe change your mind on some spots and so on. I think we have the basis for the top shapes. If you got to the point where you like what you're doing, I would suggest you to save your mask. To do so, you can check it like shapes. Here we go. Image, save as, because we haven't saved it yet in any folder. So to save it, let's go and click on save as, and then you navigate to your folder somewhere and you can save the mask. Give it a name, like black shapes is fine. Let's put an underscore here maybe, and save image. On the top part, I would like to break the symmetry a bit, so let's disable the x-axis here for a second. Then a small reminder, don't forget to click the Save All Images button time to time. The cool thing of the fact that the masking system uses external images is that you have the possibility to do multiple versions of masks and save them. So for example, for the black shape stripes, I have stored different versions, like this one is another version I have made as test, and then I can also get back to this. So you have the possibility to experiment a bit and then choose the version you like the most. So I feel like this line is a bit too straight, so I would like to change it a bit. Let's re-enable the symmetry, so it's gonna change on both sides. Now we can get back to the asymmetrical part, so let's disable the symmetry. I think that now the top part looks good to me, so I think it's time to start with the bottom part shapes. So first of all, let's click on Save All Images here, so we are sure that we have saved the progress we have made so far. And of course, let's re-enable the symmetry. Okay, I think I'm kind of falling into the perfectionism right now. So let's say we're gonna stop for now with the black shapes. And let's try to modify and fix this part a bit so it follows the mouth shape a bit more. Last adjustments, I swear. So the next step would be to fill our stripes with a color. But before we do this, something I would recommend you to do is going to the image section of your whale texture. So make sure you have your whale texture set up here, open up here. If not, you can find it over here somewhere. And then go to image and click on save as. And save it with a different name. I already did this, so I saved it as Whale Crazy Texture 2. I can overwrite here. And this way, you make sure you have a backup copy for your texture without stripes. So if you decide that you want to start from scratch and use the whale texture without stripes to make new stripes or anything else, you have this backup copy you can use. Now we're ready to fill the stripes, and to do that, we have to go to this section, the stencil mask section here, and then here we invert the texture, because so far what our texture mask we're doing is actually masking the stripes area. And this is very handy to preview how these stripes will look with the black color, but we actually need to fill them. So once we're ready, we invert the mask, and then we can use the fill tool. You can use just a solid color, like in this case, or maybe a gradient. I don't know, if you want this dark color leaning to red and then just black, you do it like so. So this way you have the top part which is a bit lighter and the bottom part which is a bit darker. Let's see how it looks without the stencil. I think it looks good to me, and I also think I would like to try out a different combination, and instead of black color, I would like to use a very dark blue, and here a very dark red, a little brighter. Okay, and then let's see how it looks. Maybe this way it's too colored. Let's check that out. Actually not. I think I like it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna use this version here. So once you like your stripes and you're ready to save it, you just save the image, Alt S here, or simply by clicking on Save All Images. And in case you change your mind, you always have your image copy inside your folder here. By the way, since we decided to use these colors for the stripes, let's not forget to save them. One last thing I just noticed I would like to correct are these little spots I just saw. What we do is enabling the mask and correcting them on the mask directly. So once we have enabled it, you can leave it as it is. Select the mask tool, make the brush a bit smaller, and make sure you use the erasing function by pressing Ctrl on these two spots. And how do we know if this worked? Let's use again the fill tool, select the gradient, then go far away. And now we can see that it worked because the dots have disappeared. Now we're done. We can disable the mask again. I don't mind that the colors have changed a bit. What we should do now is painting the mouth, because this will also have the inside of the mouth done. To see it, we should go to the Object Data Properties panel here, and under Shape Keys, we should disable this shape key here, so the whale gets back to its original position. Now that the mouth is open, it's still not very practical to paint it because we still have the rest of the body in the way. So what we can do is going to Edit mode and use again the selection masking tool. So let's select some vertices of the upper part of the tongue, the lower part of the tongue. You can see here we have the UV, so make sure you select one vertex from here and one from here. And then we have at least one vertex selected inside the mouth, in the lower part and in the upper part. So now that we have selected these vertices, we can press Ctrl L, and as you can see, everything we need gets selected. If the selection is not working like so, make sure you have enabled the seam option over here. So once we have the selection, we press Ctrl I to invert this selection and then press H. Oh, that's creepy. Anyway, once we have pressed H, everything we have selected is hidden now. And if we go to the texture paint mode, it stays hidden. This way, we don't have the body in the way and we can paint the inside of the mouth. Let's hide the eyes and the teeth. Let's start with the fill tool and let's use, I would say, red and dark red. Something like so. And let's place ourselves into the side view. And I want opposite. I want the dark color to come from behind and the bright red to be here in the front part. Okay, so now let's add some variations to this. For this, let's enable the cavity mask. And I think this way it should be fine. And let's use the gradient again. And if we use it the opposite way, it should create some dark spots on the bright side and some bright spots on the dark side. It interacts with the object ridges and crevices, and if you have not too many subdivisions, it might look a bit angled in certain spots. For this, you can smear these spots out by using the smear tool, like so. Oh, and of course, don't forget to disable the cavity mask while smearing out stuff, otherwise the smear effect will be quite limited. I think the tongue we will take care a bit later. Now let's concentrate on the inner part of the mouth. And then we're gonna hide it and take care of the tongue a bit better. Now let's try to re-enable the cavity and use the fill tool again. This curve you can use to increase or decrease the contrast of the mask. So if you don't have the result you're aiming at, just try to play around with that. Just make sure to not overdo this like I'm doing here. Let's increase the contrast again. Okay, I think it looks nice. And then let's add again, like we did before, a transparent part here so we don't overwrite what we did before. Okay, I think this way we have enough contrast, and then everything else we can smear. Maybe here we want just some more bright parts. No, too bright. Okay, I think we can work with this. So now we have enough variations from the color point of view. So everything we need to do now is to smear that out. When you're smearing out, make sure you don't make your brush too big. Blender doesn't really like giant brushes, especially if you have big textures. It might slow down the process significantly. Sometimes you don't have to make actual brush strokes, but a little circular movement is more than enough to simply smooth out the color a bit and to not move it away too much from its original place. Okay, I think this part is fine for me. Maybe later I will add some more bright color over here, but I want to take care of the tongue first. So for this, let's go back to edit mode, select the upper and lower part of the tongue. As you can see, here we have the UV seam. So make sure you have selected one vertex above the UV seam and one vertex under the UV seam. So this way you will select both sides. Then press Ctrl L, invert, Ctrl I, and hide again. Yoo-hoo! Now we can go to the texture paint mode and take care of the tongue. Boom, 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 boom. I'm not super crazy about how the gradient came out on the tongue, so I'm gonna use the paint soft brush to a really low strength to push it a bit, make it a bit brighter. Maybe this is too much. Let's adjust that a tiny bit. Just like so. Okay. And then let's smear some brighter parts just a bit. Now to add some more little bright spots, let's go to stroke, increase the jitter just a bit, and then even more, stroke, jitter, like so, and then make this bright. Okay, so this way we add some brighter spots, like everywhere. We can even enable cavity mask again, so we make sure we don't cover all the variations we have added. Can make it like so, not too much. This way we don't paint anywhere. Let's save this color and then add some red back and some dark spots. Okay, cool. I think I like the result, so we can move on. Let's unhide the eyes and the teeth. Now what we need to do is to smear out this area here, which looks a bit too sharp. And let's go back to edit mode and then press Alt H to unhide everything. Then let's go back to texture paint mode and use the smear tool here. Before I smooth out the upper gums, let's make them a bit brighter. For this, let's go to edit mode, select one vertex here, and then press Ctrl L, go back, and then use maybe bright red, enable masking, and slightly add some bright color here. And we can even add some yellow, maybe, or orange, some orangish color to the very top part, so it looks like the gum color slowly gets similar to the skin. Let's see how it looks like. I think I like it, so we can smear now. Now I want to give a different color to this skin area from the rest of the skin, but I'm not sure yet about what color I want to use. So for this, I want to use the mask tool and make another mask. So let's go here. The stencil mask option is already enabled. I will maybe select this option, which basically saves the texture and doesn't remove it from the file even if you're not using it, and then click on cross and create a new texture. I think here we can use 2K since I will be smearing out the outline anyway, so let's use 2K. Once you have saved the image, disable the mask inversion option and make sure you have the mask tool selected for this, otherwise you will be just painting normally. Now I would like the mask tool to have the same effect as we have usually with the paint hard brush, and for this we can simply set the Falloff in a similar way. So paint hard has this Falloff, which is custom, so we can recreate it with the mask tool. Let's go to Falloff, set it to custom, and simply bring it all the way up here. So we have a hard brush, which is a little bit smoothed out at the end. Okay, let's make it. Let's bring the strength to 1 and remove the pressure sensitivity. And let's color this. Okay, I don't need this to be included, so let's remove these areas. And maybe now let's go to edit mode and select this part and this part here and invert and go back to sculpt mode, enable this. Okay, and then we can hide, press H to hide everything else, and then this can be disabled again. Okay, I think I want to hide this part as well, so I simply can't go back to edit mode, select this, but I want these few loops to not be included. And I think we're good to go. And this area we hide as well. And we can move on. So let's go back to texture paint. And let's keep painting our mask. I'm not sure I want the back part to be painted. By the way, I see that here, this area here should be smeared out a bit. So let's smear it very quickly. Okay, cool. Let's get back to the mask. And maybe add the color to just this area here a bit. Maybe not sure. Okay, let's do it like so. So we have just the front part. Okay, I think it's fine. Here we don't need this layer. Maybe just a tiny bit spreading here. And then here, this part here, we're gonna be smearing out. So the outer color will be merging with the inner color, which I want to stay dark red. Now we can Alt-H, enable this tool, and Alt-H to unhide everything that's hidden. And then here, let's work a bit more on the masking part. Okay, so now let's invert the mask like so, and now let's bring down the mask opacity here. So this way we can see how the new colors combine with the rest of the body. Let's use the Paint Soft brush for this. I think we can start with the basic red first, and I think it's definitely too much. So let's try to make it more dark yellow, and maybe let's try to add some darker spots. Now that we have added some colors, we can use the smear tool to mix them together a bit better. Okay, I think this way it looks good. Maybe too dark. Maybe we can add some yellow on top of it. Let's see. So let's enable the stencil mask back. And then use the Paint Soft brush with a very, very soft strand. Make it a bit bigger and just tap a tiny bit to make everything a little brighter. Okay, this way. And this is why, by the way, I lowered down the opacity. Let's lower it down like much more, because otherwise you see everything a bit darker and the final effect is not very clear of the things combined together. Okay, I think this way it's much better. Now we can bring back the opacity once again, so we can actually see if we enable the mask, and then smear out this part again. A bit more. Cool. Okay, I think I like how it looks. Oh, and the other side, I think the mirroring broke a bit. We can smear that out so it looks decently. Maybe the mask got broken. Yeah, the mask mirroring. Okay, anyway, we are almost done, so we don't care. Gonna add some color manually, maybe. So I think this looks good. Let's check it out from both sides. Yeah, cool. I like it. Maybe let's smear this part out a bit more. As you can see here, we have this little line we have smeared by mistake from the black area, and it probably got smeared outside the UV's edges. When this happens, it's pretty hard to erase. If we go to edit mode, we can see it is located exactly on the UV seam. There are several ways you can fix that, but the most efficient for me was just fixing it directly from the image editor. So if we zoom in, you can see here it is in the image editor, and here it is inside the 3D viewport. What should we do in this case is simply go here, make sure the image editor is set to paint. Here usually you also see the preview or your UVs, and you can see that this is located slightly outside the UV. What we're gonna do is picking the color from here, since it might be a mix of the different colors we have used. To do this, use the Shift-X shortcut, and then you go here, make sure this is set to paint, and very carefully paint over this black spot. Really, really carefully to make sure we don't cover all the things we have done so far. And let's check this isn't happening in other spots. So since we had this problem on one side, this probably is happening on the other side. Yes. So let's fix that here as well. So let's just cover this. We can go to the other side here to make sure this is adjusted. Control Z to see it. Yes, we have it over here, as you can see. So let's fix that here too. Very carefully. Make sure you don't cover all the progress you have made so far. So yeah, I think we have fixed everything, and we can save the image by pressing Alt-S while hovering our cursor inside the image editor. Now it feels like we are done, the main work is concluded, but I would like to do one more step on this project, and it is something I have mentioned at the beginning. The reason why I would like to have the normals here in my material so I can preview them inside the material preview mode while texturing is that it gives me the possibility to use these normals while painting. Why is that? Because there are some little details I don't really have inside the mesh itself. So if I disable the normals now, you can see there are some barnacles missing and so on. So that's the main point. And now at my final step, I can enhance these little details with colors. Before we start enhancing the details, let's save another backup copy. Before saving my backup copy, what I want to do is fixing the internal of the eye, which I just noticed it doesn't have this dark color. So let's go back to texture paint after we have hidden the eye, and then what I'm gonna do is actually not painting the eye from the viewport by painting it here. If you want to do something similar, make sure you're in paint mode. And here I have the eyes UVs, and I make my brush a bit bigger. I color pick the color from here with Shift X, and then simply paint. The only downside of painting here is, of course, that you can't use the mirroring. Anyway, we still need to fix this part here, so let's quickly do that. Like so. All the angles. And here on top as well. Here. Okay, cool. Let's see how it looks on the other side. Okay, here we have some little dots we need to fix. Okay, the inner part of the eye looks good. Now that we have fixed this little mistake, what we can do is save the image, save, and then save a copy of this image, so we have a backup just in case we go too far with the little details and we would like to go back to the basic version. Okay, so now we can start painting the little details and I can show you how it looks. Anyway, let's bring back the eye with Alt H, and let's go back to texture paint. And for this purpose, I like using, this is so annoying. When going back to texture paint mode, you should make sure you have selected just one element, otherwise you will see the outline of the other elements all the time, which might be annoying. Anyway, let's go back to texture paint mode. For this purpose, I usually use the Paint Soft brush. And what I do, basically, the principle is, so let's try it on a bigger area, like the eye, for example. And what I do basically is color picking the color in the area where I want to enhance the details with Shift X. And then instead of mix as blend mode, I use color dodge, which will add some lighter spots. And then for the darker spots, I use color burn or linear burn. So as you can see, this is how the darker effect looks. Let's go back. This one I'm gonna keep. And to not set them up every time we want to use them, we can create copies of the Paint Soft brush with the different setups. I have already mine here, but let me show you how to make them. Delete, delete, and delete. So let's use the basic Paint Soft. This one we will bring back to mix. Then duplicate asset. Paint one is gonna be Paint Soft Lighten. Let's just call it Lighten. Save. And here we set the blended to color dodge. And then like save changes to asset, and then let's make another copy, duplicate again, and call it Darken, save, and here we set it to linear burn or color burn. Of course, you can experiment yourself with all the different blends, but for me personally, for this purpose, linear burn and color burn works better. And one more thing I'm gonna do for the Darken brush is setting the Falloff to sharper, since usually the places where I want to add some dark color are some carved areas where big Falloff isn't really the best option. Let's add some more dark color here as well. And don't forget to save changes to acid, then some more light color. This will make a bit weaker. And by the way, if you want to erase it a bit, you can bring back the mix mode. Okay, I think that for the eye I'm done. And now let's do the same thing with the little barnacles. Before you start painting the barnacles, make sure you disable the X symmetry, because these elements are not symmetrical. So this would make a mess. And one more thing, as you can see in this area here especially, we have some barnacles that are located where the dark and the bright area are both present. So what we do in this case, we simply use the stencil mask we have created for these dark lines. So first we paint one side and then we paint the other side. Very simple. So once I'm done with the dark side, I just invert the mask and keep painting. And of course, every time you got to a new area with a different color, don't forget to Shift X to color pick the color from there. The fins are symmetrical here, so we can re-enable the symmetry once we got to the fins barnacles. And also don't forget to save the image time to time, especially if you feel like you have made a good progress. If the normals, like in this case, are not clearly visible, what we can do is go to Material and increase the strength temporarily. This way, much better. of course, once we are done, we can decrease the normal strength again. I think I overdid this part a bit, so let's see if I can maybe come back and redo the same thing with just the weak version of the normals. My fear is that I can lose these details here of the barnacles. So let me check what I can do. So this, let's bring this to 1 again. Okay, we still have these areas, and let's see if we can fix them a bit by using the Lighten tool. Okay, I think the Lighten tool works pretty well if we don't overdo it. And don't forget to color pick. Let's use the paint soft brush here to make this effect a bit weaker. So this is the hard part here. Let's enable the stencil mask again, and then color pick this part, and this part. Oh. And correct this area just a bit. So as you can see, some spots are better to be done with enhanced normals, but others no, absolutely, because you then, the risk is that you just overdo the effect. Okay, I think now we have fixed that. This part here. Okay. And then everything else we can smear a bit so it doesn't, the passage isn't too strong. So okay, so what I want is these really soft dark areas, which now are looking good to me. Uh-oh. Don't use the smear tool where you have the black spots. But okay, so let's smear this down here, and here let's smear them just tiny bit. Okay, and here we have one more area we can darken a bit. Control X, okay, very slightly, just slightly. Okay, I think I'm pretty good with the result. Let's check it from far away. Maybe here it's too dark yet, but you know what? It's okay. This barnacle we can make a bit less saturated. Let's color pick this area here and use the paint soft tool to erase this part again. Make it just a bit bigger. Okay. Maybe this part here just a tiny bit lighter. And this a bit darker. Let's check what I can do. Okay, like so, and then I smear that out just a bit. Okay, cool. So my advice here, once you're done with the barnacles and you're happy with them, save everything and just then start with the lines. Don't repeat my mistakes. You can of course maybe add some more variations to different areas. This is totally up to you. It's not like you have to do things exactly the same I do. By the way, this part here, I feel like it's missing a little spot. Dark. Okay, cool. Now it looks much better. Oh, one more spot I would like to fix here is this guy here. So let's select Paint Soft again. Control X and just, ooh, don't forget to enable the stencil mask back. So let Control X and then like erase this part, this part as well, and here. I think here maybe green fits a bit more because we have the greenish part on these areas as well. So I think here I'm gonna leave it, while here I would like it to be more like this color here. What we can do is basically this. Color pick this part and then use Paint Soft to place it here. Maybe Paint Soft. Let's erase it a bit more. Like so. And then let's color pick this guy and darken this area just a tiny bit. Nice. I feel like I like it. And maybe make it bigger just a bit. And just disable this thing here. So we can disable the stencil mask, I think. So we overlay this part just a bit. How about this? Nah, don't like it. Okay, cool. I think now we're done. So yay! And we can go here and save all images. Great. I'm happy. I hope you enjoyed this video and I wanted to have some feedback from you on this format I'm trying out. To give you some context, I don't have much time for content production lately, but I really enjoy sharing my process, so I decided to make the editing a bit more rough this time and didn't cut away all the breaths or small pauses. Currently for me this is the best way to get back to releasing something, so I would like to hear what you think. Is that okay? The information is valuable enough to not mind the editing not being that polished? So simply let me know in a comment. And if you got till this point, but you don't want to think about something to write, but you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a whale emoji. And if it happens that you use my whale to practice the texturing techniques from this video and you decided to share the results online, please tag me. I'm really curious to see all the nice results. Thanks again for watching and see you in my next video. Goodbye!